In this video, I want to show you why you cannot save your relationship alone. And we hear things like, it takes two to tango, for example. And here you find your partner in a position where she doesn't want to save the relationship with you. And so you're thinking in your head, well, how am I supposed to save my relationship if my partner is not willing to tango with me? And if you watch a lot of my client stories talking about the journey, you will find that a lot of them actually start off in the same position where they're the only ones saving the relationship. In fact, in our program, we only enroll people who are individuals. So in this video, I'm going to show you exactly what they did to try to save their marriage alone so you can do the same as well. So a lot of you in this position, I think most of you know what the right things to do are. But when you try to do those things, you realize that those things don't really work. Your partner's pushing away further. And this can be very demotivating for you. This can be very discouraging and makes you feel a bit hopeless. And you think, for example, at this point, well, I've done everything I could do, but even the best advice that I'm getting from the internet is not really working for me. So what else is there to do? So the only thing you can do is either give up or you start to blame things on your partner here because you've done everything you can, so it must be her fault. And so when you look at cases where people did actually save their relationship alone, you're going to be thinking too, well, maybe that works for their case, but it wouldn't work for my case because my case is a bit different. It's special because I've tried everything here. And I know, guys, a lot of you go through this because I get so many comments and emails like you see around me here saying the exact same things. And so before we can understand what to do here, how to save your relationship alone, we need to understand the roots behind this hopelessness, behind this resentment that you feel. This is actually the key blocker for you to try to save your relationship alone right now. So to imagine this, I want you to imagine your relationship like an organism. And this, just like any organism, it has organs, and the health of this organism depends on how healthy the internals are. And right now, this organism that we're picturing here has a lot of weaknesses. So in our program, we refer to this as the internal weaknesses, the lack of internal shifts, things like victim mindset, for example, tetheredness, the lack of bulletproof vest, and the lack of self-esteem, for example. But it can also have what we call external weaknesses, which is the lack of the skills to actually guide conversations, lead conversations via what we call the frameworks. And if you look at these internal and external weaknesses, the internal weakness will always cause the external weakness. So for example, you have your internal beliefs and your internal values, and whatever you believe and whatever you value here will lead to how you interpret things in life. And your interpretations will automatically lead to the feelings, and your feelings lead to actions, and your actions will lead to the outcome. But the funny thing is that there's a loop here. When you get the outcome, the way you see the world, the beliefs you have and the values you have, your paradigms essentially, will feed back into how you interpret your outcome. Now, I know this can sound very scientific right now and too academic, so let me just break this down to you via an example. So for example, you find your partner stonewalling or gaslighting you right now because she's also feeling a bit resented and bitter as well. Now, if you have this belief that your partner is stonewalling or gaslighting you because she's toxic, she has an unhealthy approach to relationships, she's trying to be avoidant, whatever it is. If you see your partner stonewalling you right now, that belief will lead to how you interpret why she's stonewalling you right now. So maybe you think, oh, she's stonewalling again because she's avoidant, she doesn't know how to deal with problems, something is wrong with her, etc. And when you think this thinking will always lead to a feeling. Maybe you feel frustrated. Maybe you feel a bit demotivated because you think, it's just one of those times where she's stonewalling again. She's being avoidant again. And then your feelings, of course, will lead to an action. In this case, when you feel frustrated, your action will be a bit negative. And maybe you're trying to hide these feelings, but we all know that feelings come out in your micro expressions, microtones, so it will show no matter how hard you try to keep it in. Now, when your actions are tainted by this frustration like this, it will of course make your partner more defensive. Because as we talk in many of my videos, this stonewalling is usually caused by the lack of safety, the lack of trust. And so when she can sense that frustration within you, that will actually shut her down even more. So here you're seeing the first cycle where what you believe will affect your feelings, will affect your actions, and your actions will then affect your partner here, where your frustration is causing her to shut down even more. When she shuts down, that frustrates you even more because you're seeing it from your beliefs, and that fuels your anger even more, your frustration even more, and so on and so on and so on. And before you know it, this is the cycle where, let's say if you picture this relationship like an organism again with different organs that make up the overall health of it, it starts to kill one of those organs. Because now it builds that resentment within you to say, ooh, now my belief that my partner is toxic is now further confirmed. But it does not just stop there, because there's what we call collateral damage too. So let's say in this case, you are arguing about your partner stonewalling. And in this intense frustration that is building up via cycle one, you both start to say things that are maybe not the best to each other. You start to show your anger. You start to add insults to the argument. And so now you create another layer of problems here where it's not just the stonewalling you're arguing about. Now you're arguing about the tone. Now you're arguing about the way you express it, the mean words you're saying, the insulting words you're saying. So you're creating another problem on top of another problem here. And if you look within your own relationship, you can see this happening quite quickly within the span of one conversation, or even a 5-minute conversation where it spreads like wildfire, where just like a virus, for example, you arguing about one organ will actually cause the death of another organ and another organ and another organ, because so many negative things get brought up within a 5-minute conversation, for example. And this leads us to cycle number 3, which is as the health of more organs deteriorate, you will start to both feel the lack of safety, the lack of trust, the lack of ability to express what you want to express, because you think in your head, for example, like, oh, what's the point? It's not going to be resolved anyway. Or maybe you think in your head, you know what, there's so much wrong with this relationship, I don't really know where to start right now. So in terms of the 5 pillars that we talk about, this will remove the first 2 pillars, but then it'll also remove the next 2 pillars, which are the admiration and the alignment you have in your relationship. Because it's impossible to admire someone that you have so many conflicts with, and it's impossible to align with someone on a deep level if you have a lot of deep-seated resentments embittered towards that relationship, towards that person. And this 3rd cycle right here, when you lack safety, the safety to even express what you want to express, the true feelings that you feel, that is when internal resentments really, really build up. Because how many of you have been sitting on a couch, for example, watching maybe a comedy show, and a thought comes up about your partner that makes you angry, and you let it stew, and this one thought creates another negative thought, another negative thought, and before you know it, within 2 minutes, for example, of you watching a comedy show, you can really feel very angry and embittered and resented about your partner, and nothing new actually happened. You're just sitting there because you're playing all this stuff in your head. So when you get to cycle 3 here, that is when the ability of the organism to basically heal itself, that organism's immune system really gets compromised. And that's when not only can it not heal itself, because all the organs and both of you in this case are so resented, so embittered, and the motivation to actually try to do the right thing or to want to do the right thing is so low that you find it so impossible to heal the relationship on your own. And it's also the cycle that creates more of cycle number 1 and 2, and it just wreaks havoc in so many different angles here. And so when you look at the level of hopelessness you feel and the level of resentment you feel that is preventing you from doing the right things, it's because these 3 cycles have been happening for far too long. And it's why the situation can seem very impossible. Why people say that it's impossible to save your relationship by yourself, because it's us not being able to break through these 3 cycles that we create together with your partner as well. And it's us not being able to do the right things because of the resentments that's built up within us because of these 3 cycles as well. And guys, all my clients start this way. All of them. And so if you watch a lot of my client stories, you'll see that they break through it. So how do they do it? And the problem with most approaches is, if you look at, again, the cycle of your beliefs to your interpretations, to your feelings, to your actions, they're trying to change your actions here. They're trying to teach you the tactics of what to do, or what you should do, what you should say, what you cannot do, what you should not do, etc. But they're not touching all the parts before that, all the beliefs, interpretation, and feelings. Because what happens here is that you can learn what to do, the right actions to do. But if you haven't touched, or if you haven't corrected the beliefs, the interpretations, the feelings, you're going to find yourself stuck in the same position where you know what to do, but you just, feelings-wise, you just cannot bring yourself to do it or do it consistently. So this really puts you in a cycle usually where you're finding yourself brute forcing your way into doing the right things. And this can be very exhausting. It's very demotivating. And when you brute force your way into something like this, you cannot be consistent, and it cannot ever be effective. It cannot ever be seen as genuine as well, because if you see someone trying to do something nice for you, for example, and you can tell that they're forcing themselves to do something nice to you, can you actually look at the nice thing they do and say that's genuine? It's going to be very hard for you. And the same thing here. You can brute force your way to doing nice things in your relationship right now to try to save it alone, but the very fact that you're brute forcing your way into it is going to make it look very ingenuine. And when you see that it doesn't work, that's when you relapse. That's when you get demotivated, for example, and you tell yourself, well, I tried my best. I tried everything I could, but it doesn't work. I tried to apply the best advice, but it doesn't work. Or you feel a bit more resented toward this relationship, where you tell yourself, for example, I did so much. I did everything. I tried everything I could, and my partner doesn't even appreciate it. I don't even feel valued in this whole relationship. So what's the point of even trying to save it? And so this can feel like you're fighting this very unnecessary uphill battle where you're just like trying to push a rock up this hill, but this rock is just way too heavy, and no matter what you do, you just cannot get this rock up. It's like you take 2 steps forward, you take 3 steps back. And I'm going to show you a comment here by one of my clients, Pierre. And he faced the same thing. He has tried other programs and therapists before joining my program. And he says that what makes a big difference in this program is that we focus on the internal shifts. Because he was trying to do things, the right things, without those internal shifts. And it was impossible. He felt like he was just pushing this big rock up this hill and he can never do it. So with that, I want to show you the steps to saving your relationship alone. And again, this has to start with the deep internal shifts. And I want to show you here the difference of what we call the thriving versus what most people do, which is a surviving approach. So to understand this better, we need to look back at the flow and the cycle that we talked about earlier. And if you look at the cycle, it's really a flywheel effect kind of thing, where once it spins, once this cycle starts going, it's really, really hard to stop it. So for example, if you again have the belief that your partner is stonewalling because she's doing it out of malintent, out of bad intent, out of toxicity, because she is avoidant, she doesn't want to talk about problems, whatever, she can't deal with problems. And you make the interpretation to say, oh, she's stonewalling me right now because she's being toxic. That leads to your feelings and your actions, etc. And it leads to your reflections. Once that cycle starts going, it's going to be really, really hard to stop it. Because I don't know if you have ever talked to someone who truly believes in their head that stonewalling is a bad thing. If you haven't seen this, I want you to go to my comment section in my video about stonewalling and just see how some people speak. It's impossible to actually convince them otherwise. They feel like whatever they think is so right and justified. They feel like whatever they feel because of what they think is so right and justified. They feel like their actions because of their feelings is very right and justified. And there's no point in this whole cycle, in this whole flywheel, where you can talk them against what they think they know, what they think is right. And it's almost like talking to a depressed person, for example. You know, if you look at people who are depressed, at least situationally depressed, you'll see that they usually have very negative paradigms about the world, about themselves, which leads to the way they interpret the world, which leads to their feelings, their actions, and so on. And if you ever try to talk to a depressed person and try to convince them, hey, life is actually very beautiful, you have a lot of good things going on right now, it wouldn't work. In fact, when you tell them that, hey, I think your depression is a bit situational, and if you change your beliefs and in the way you think about the world, you will actually stop getting so depressed. They will actually get upset at you. They will get offended because they'll say, oh, how dare you say that my depression isn't real. So once this flywheel gets going, it's actually really, really hard to stop it. And in your case, you actually have a lot of beliefs right now that makes you even more resentful about your partner. So for example, again, if you believe that your partner is toxic, and that fuels your interpretation, then that fuels your feelings, your actions, and when you get the outcome of your actions, you reinterpret that back as her being toxic. That is you facing your own flywheel. And the resentment that you feel may feel very true for you right now, but it may not actually be a truth because it's, again, rooted in the beliefs you have, which may not always be true. So if you look at many approaches that a lot of coaches, a lot of other therapists, a lot of other programs suggest. So for example, like breathing techniques or even journaling, for example. All of these techniques are what we call surviving because they are mechanisms, they are tools that you can use only when this flywheel has started. But again, like we said, when this flywheel has started, it's really, really hard to stop it. I mean, imagine, for example, when you're feeling angry right now, for example, you're feeling so embittered, so resented to your partner, and someone tells you to journal. Someone tells you to apply some breathing techniques. That will not work. The breathing techniques will be so moot compared to the massive resentment that's built up from this flywheel. The journaling you feel, the journaling you do, it's not going to be effective because you're going to be journaling about how much you are resentful, not about how you can get out of your resentments. So the primary hallmark of the surviving technique is that you are trying to fix your emotions. You're trying to fix something after this flywheel has started. And when that happens, again, once this flywheel starts going, it's like, imagine going to a massive windmill and there you're trying to use your hands to stop this windmill. It's impossible. And that's why a lot of people relapse. A lot of people feel like trying to do the right things is so exhausting because it is. You're trying to stop this flywheel that's impossible to stop. Now, contrast this to the thriving approach. This is when we look at this flywheel again and we say, hey, this flywheel really starts with those values, with those beliefs that we have. And so what we want to do and what I teach my clients to do is that look to that root. Try to use techniques to actually try to change your beliefs, change your values about the relationship, about your partner, about yourself, and really try to program it within yourself. And in our program, we use a technique called auto-suggestions to do that, where we reliably fix those values so that whenever you get an event happening to you, the way you interpret that event is going to be so healthy that the flywheel doesn't even spin in the first place, that you don't even feel bad and frustrated in the first place. So you stop this flywheel from spinning before it even starts to spin. And if you look at my videos, for example, on how you should see resistance, we talk about how resistance should not be seen as a bad thing, but actually as an opportunity, as a good thing, as your partner finally having enough safety to tell you what she actually feels. And it actually empowers you because now that you know the problem, you can actually do something about it. So if you change your beliefs about resistance like this, and you really deeply program it within you, whenever you do get resistance, for example, your partner stonewalls you or gaslights you, you're not going to be interpreting that in a negative way. You're not going to be feeling negative about that. You're not going to be doing something negative because you fix it right at the root here. So if you see resistance as a positive thing, you will interpret it as a positive thing. You will feel positively about it, and you will do positive things. And if you watch this video too up above, where I talk about if your partner is making it hopeless for you, that's actually a massive opportunity. That's another instance of me trying to change your values and your beliefs about a particular event. In this case, your partner making it hopeless for you, and how your partner making it hopeless for you is actually a massive opportunity. And if you look at this approach, it actually makes the right actions easier. Because if you watch a lot of my clients talk about their journey, talk about how they deal with resistance and partner feeling hopeless, it starts off with them changing their values and their paradigms about that, and they naturally feel positive things towards it, and naturally leads to the actions, etc. And so this flywheel is spinning in a much more positive direction, and it feels very effortless. It feels very natural because you're not fighting this massive negative flywheel. So why the thriving approach works is that not only does it increase your odds of actually doing the right things, but you can do the right things much more consistently for over a longer period of time because it doesn't feel very effortful for you. And if you really think about it, guys, this is really the secret behind how great leaders, great performers, great athletes perform. Because if you look at great athletes, for example, they often do not become their best until they face the highest pressure possible. Because they have learned to see pressure and difficulty as a positive thing. They have changed their values and beliefs about pressure. And so when pressure comes, their reflexive feelings and interpretations about it are going to be positive. Their actions are going to rise up. And so for a real performer, there's no such thing as too much pressure. There's no such thing as too much bad. Because they don't have the surviving approach, they have the thriving approach. The second step to saving your relationship alone is to know your power in setting the trend for feedback loops. So previously we already talked about how what you do is already affecting your partner, and what your partner does in return is already affecting you. So what you do is already affecting the relationship in many ways. It's already affecting whether your partner will continue to do negative things or positive things. Right now though, if you're in this position where you're saving your relationship alone, that cycle has gone to the negative direction for way too long. But the main point here is that it's possible to change someone's behavior via what you do. So to say that, oh, you cannot change someone, you cannot change someone's behavior, that's a bit of a really odd thing to say, because if you look at your relationship right now, it's already happening. You are already changing her behavior right now, albeit in a negative way. And the third step to saving your relationship alone is being able to understand the importance and the how of how to change the environment, the culture of that relationship. So if you watch a lot of my client interviews, like the ones I'm posting right here for you guys, you will hear them say the exact same things, which is that once they change their behavior, they will change the culture of their relationship. And once they change the culture, that will also change their partner's behavior in really crazy ways sometimes, to where it's impossible to believe that their partner's behavior can change that much. So if you go back to the feedback chart where what you do is already affecting your partner and your partner is affecting what you do, etc., we can add a few more nodes there where what you do is affecting the environment, and the environment then affects your partner's behaviors. And when that changes her behavior, that will change the environment once again for you, to make it easier for you to do the right things. And this positive cycle continues. And again, this cycle is already happening right now, whether you know it or not, albeit it's going in a negative direction right now, where what you do is affecting the environment in a negative way for whatever reason, and the environment is affecting her in a negative way, and so on. Now, again, the point here is that to say that you cannot change someone's behavior is a bit odd, because you already are, again, changing their behavior, just in a negative way. But the key secret to changing someone's behavior is not to change their behavior directly, but to change the culture and the environment that you're in this case, the culture and environment of your relationship first. And the great thing about this is that changing the environment, the culture, is always within your control. If I say to you, for example, you're gonna change your partner's behavior, yeah, that's out of your control, because what your partner does is out of your control. But changing the culture is always within your control. And a great example of this is, let's say your partner again is stonewalling you. And instead of reacting to the stonewalling in a bad, negative way, instead you say to her and go, hey, you know, I see you're kind of shutting down right now. And if I look back at how I acted in the past and whenever we talk about anything heavy or difficult, I always kind of talk over you. I always make it about me. And I never listen to you. So I kind of understand why you would shut down right now, because there's really no safety to express. So if you respond to her stonewalling in that way, and you literally tell her, I understand why you're stonewalling, and you create safety that way, you don't think that's eventually going to change the environment? That's eventually going to actually open her up and change her perception about, hey, maybe there's no need to stonewall. That's a perfect example of how you can change the environment to change someone's behavior. And guys, I'm going to say something very controversial here that can offend a lot of people. But if you reject this idea that if you change the environment, you can change her behavior, think about what you're saying about your partner here. You're basically saying that your partner is so messed up that even if you perfect the environment, if you give her everything that she needs in the environment to stop her from doing all these toxic things, to change her behavior, that she still won't change her behavior, despite you making the perfect environment. So think about this for you. If someone thought that you are so messed up that even if you were given the perfect environment, you cannot change your behavior in a positive way, what would you feel? Wouldn't you feel the same resentment? Would you want to save this relationship if that was you? Would you feel safe in that relationship? Would you want to invest yourself into the relationship? Probably not. So when you look at your partner feeling resented, not wanting to save the relationship, not feeling safe, doing a lot of toxic things, having no motivation to save the relationship, it should be no mystery why as well. Step number 4 to saving your relationship alone is to become an effortless and consistent performer. And this is key because that feedback loop that you saw earlier, that doesn't happen overnight. In fact, for my clients, it takes them 3, 6, even 12 months sometimes to really create this cycle. Now, during that time, you may even feel increased resistance. So to understand this, let's say that you're working for a boss who's very toxic and they've been saying very mean things to you for a good part of 5 years, for example. And suddenly overnight, he changes his behavior. Suddenly he says nice things to you. What would you think? You would get really suspicious. You would be thinking, what is he up to? What does he want? Why is he changing? Same thing here, your partner is going to start to get really suspicious when you start to change your behavior as well. And this is why you need to become that performer. And to understand this performance mindset, we can look at the quote here. It says, amateurs practice something until they can get it right. But real pros, real performers practice something until they cannot get it wrong, until that thing has become their lowest default, that even when they're tired, even when they're not even thinking, they naturally do that right thing. And I want you to think about any performer that comes to mind. They're the people that can make the complex seem very effortless, seem very simple. And they're the ones showing up at very high levels, very consistently as well. They don't have really great days, then the next day they're like really bad, the next day they're really great. They're always kind of very consistent. And they're the ones who always thrive under the most pressure. In fact, often the more pressure you give them, the more they thrive. And so if you're not a performer here, if you're just an amateur, then whenever you get resistance and whenever you have to perform for a long period of time like this, you're gonna crumble eventually. And when you crumble eventually, that's gonna undo a lot of the work that you've done. And when it undoes the work that you've done, you're gonna feel that resentment, that demotivation again, that cycle that we talked about earlier where you just feel like no matter what you do, no matter how hard you try, you cannot really break through. But the only way to play this consistently and play this effortlessly and thrive through all the resistance that you're gonna get, the only way to do this is if you become a real performer, where the right thing becomes effortless for you, becomes second nature to you. And this is crucial as well because being a performer makes everything you do a lot more believable, a lot more trustworthy as well. So imagine, let's say you see your partner changing their behavior, but you can tell that them changing their behavior is so forced. It's so difficult for them to change their behavior, to do the nice thing. Can you look at that and go, this is something they're gonna do genuinely? This is something they're doing permanently? Of course not. You're gonna look at that and go, ooh, this makes me feel very uneasy. So if you cannot be a performer, yeah, sure, you can have your changes, but whatever changes you have will seem very unnatural, will seem very ingenuine, will seem ineffective as well. And of course, again, it makes it easier for you to do the right things because again, here you're not trying to fight this uphill battle of trying to do the right things despite the wrong internal shifts. You are doing the right things and backed up by the right internal shifts that makes it so effortless, so natural for you to do the right things. And only when you do these 4 things do you actually focus on the 5th thing, which is focusing on the external shifts, the frameworks, for example, and the ways, the skills to actually guide conversations, focusing on the things you should do and say, etc. But the thing about this is that a lot of people have it backwards. They try to focus again on the external stuff, the tactics, the what to do, what to say, before they focus on all the internal shifts. And most people have it backwards. You need to start with the internal shifts first and then the external stuff. So again, if you look at my client stories like the ones with Jason, David, or Nick, Their journey started off in the exact same hopeless place, where they found themselves the only ones trying to save the relationship, and their partner doesn't even want to try. Wants nothing to do with this attempt of trying to save the relationship. And how they all learn to prioritize the internal shifts first. And once the internal shifts are taken care of, all the rest of the stuff just comes more naturally. And they're always amazed at how much their partner's behavior can change as well. And the funny thing also is that they're also amazed at how much more motivation, how much more positivity, how much more desire they have to actually want to save that relationship. You know, we have enrolled 4,000 clients at this point, and this has never failed. The only way this fails is if you do it backwards. If you follow a lot of the common approaches right now and you focus on doing the right things and saying the right things before you fix the internal shifts. But if you fix the internal shifts first, you can never fail. So guys, if you want to learn about more of these internal shifts that will make everything else just so effortless for you, then I want you to join me in my masterclass on the 5 proven steps to rebuilding your relationship from the ground up. So I'm gonna leave the link above my head here, but I hope that was helpful for you guys, and I hope to see you in the next video.